some small redemption. Something I'd hoped was there all along. Because as fair as I'm trying to be, there's an honesty here that I owe you. This bad movie here, this one's a rough ride. A rough ride down a long rocky road. A long rocky road on a nameless horse. A long rocky road through a dry, hot desert. And I ain't trying to turn you away or turn you off the trail or nothing. After all, I'm here to guide you. And like I said, it's a rough ride. And it'll test your leather. I hope you packed for this one. If you haven't, if you ain't prepared, or you're just not sure about this one, you ain't gotta go. And there's no shame in taking a side saddle through spoiler territory and just listening along. After all, this trail starts off rough, and it don't smooth out till we make it all the way out to California. I've always considered myself to have pretty thick skin as far as offensive content in bad movies goes. But this had me feeling pretty chapped and wind-burnt by the end. It's probably about as far down the bad end of the bad movie barrel as we care to go. It's a movie more fondly remembered than watched. We still make jokes about this one all the time. Pretty memorable catchphrases. Really, it's a pretty memorable movie. As much as I hated it, I couldn't stop. Hence the episode. There were a lot of reasons not to do this one, honestly. It's a terrible movie. It's a terrible movie that's offensive to the point of being difficult to watch. On my first viewing, we seriously considered stopping the movie at several points because it felt simply too offensive. Mind you, I've watched Gigi more than a few times. You know, the 2003 Ben Affleck Jennifer Lopez atrocity? It only manages to hold half a candle to this remarkable oversight of a movie. I want to remind you all, opportunities are fleeting and short in showbiz and are all too often hard on children. Before we get started, Maddie Ziegler was only 14 when she made this movie. And we all should have the right to fall down and scrape our knees, get up, rub ourselves off, and keep going, even if we get a little raspberry in the process. And this is not the end of Maddie's career, by any means. Because I did save the best for last with her bio. She's still acting. Still voice acting and doing kids shows and stuff like that, but she's also just starred in West Side Story. You know, Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, the remake, as Velma. She starred in the 2021 release of West Side Story and she fucking blew it away. It was a real standout performance and really just goes to show that a little blip in the radar never stopped no star.
So it's time for our pre-show breakdown. Alright. Movie is a 2021 feature film written by Sia and Dallas Clayton, directed by Sia, produced by Sia and Vincent Landé. It stars Kate Hudson as Kazoo, a character as morally tone-deaf as her namesake instrument. Maddie Ziegler as music making you uncomfortable. Leslie Odom Jr. as Ebo, the emotional masochist who only wants to crush you with his love. Beto Calvillo as Felix, our proverbial Benny to music's June. Mary-Kate Place as Millie with the scratch and sniff will. Hector Elizondo as George, the evil water baron. Sia as Sia, the pop star looking to buy piles of pills. And Tig Notaro as the host of the children's TV show Still Lurking in My Nightmares. Music cost $16 million at the time of production to create, and it has been critically panned. It only scored a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. It got a 3.1 on IMDb, a mere 23% on Metacritic, and only 26% of Google users like this movie. But the important question, is it for you? Well, like an abusive relationship, this movie will tear you down. It is a triumph of emotional brutality. Racially coded characters of human beings combined with a portrayal of autism that even Justin Bartha would find offensive, all led by a recovering addict right off the Maury Povich show. I advise everyone to pay close attention with this one to see if it's for you. Music has stunning set design and remarkable use of color, lighting, and costuming, especially during its musical segments. The musical segments are exclusive to the movie. Sadly, you can't actually see the routines that went with these songs on any other platform, so if you're a big Sia fan, that's the reason right there that you should be watching this movie. It's also pretty memorable, and a good movie to gasp and go WTF at with friends, because there is plenty of that in there. But again, this one is for friends and wine, or some kind of beverage, as this movie is peak cringe. But if you're a bad movie fan for the cringe, this one might be just what you're looking for. All that being said, if you can stomach it, it's likely to be a movie brought back up in bad movie circles because of its extremity. And it is a multiple Golden Raspberry winner if you're looking for one of those to put under your belt. With the reasons to watch this movie out of the way, I must also remind you that you might find this movie incredibly offensive. And if you're not the kind of person who wants to watch a dark movie with no happy endings that's really only redeemed by some weird musical segments throughout, then you might want to just sit this one out and listen to our take on it. See for yourself, guys, after you got a little bit of an idea what's in store for you. That being said, as usual, we pulled a 5-star review and a 1-star review from the annals of the internet for you, and they're about as polar opposite as you could get. So, here it goes. 5 stars by Munch Rob. I am autistic. I absolutely love this movie. The way that it captured won't be in the autistic is like, I liked all the colors, I liked all the ways that they were dancing, and I liked all the choreography. It was just an awesome movie. Please release us on Blu-ray so that I can buy this. Anyone who is saying that this offends autistic people, you're not speaking for all of us. 5 stars. Alright, now what about the 1-star reviews? By MacArthur. Sia, who hurt you? What caused Sia to create this unholy abomination that calls itself a musical? She must have watched a CNN documentary about autism and thought that I can profit off of that. Maddie Ziegler fills the title role, a low-functioning autistic teenager whose grandmother abruptly dies and her selfish, junky half-sister, Kate Hudson, must come to terms with the reality that she has to care for her. She's aided by Leslie Odom Jr. in the horrifically outdated magical inn trope. The cast is loaded with legitimately talented players, from Hudson and Odom to Juliette Lewis and Kathy Najimy. Ben Schwartz has a minor role as a flamboyant drug dealer, and Sia herself steps out from behind the camera to appear as a druggy pop star. However, their presence doesn't make up for the careless writing, production values, and overall cringy vibes. There's also a Billy Elliot B-plot that has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. It ends in tragedy, but why the hell do we care? Remove it. It makes no difference on the final product, but it could be roughly 20 minutes shorter. Even half a star is too generous for a music video compilation that apparently needed to shoehorn in a foolhardy attempt at understanding a real disability. You know, Sia, maybe you're just a bad director. And for as much as everyone knows I love those harsh criticisms and I enjoy listening to them, that is much harsher than I actually feel. With that being said, let's get into our movie analysis, shall we?
Mom, have you seen my peanut butter? High five!
Please, that's not cranberry sauce.
Watch me.
So, this movie intros with a 14-year-old autistic girl getting dressed. She's in oversized underwear, but it's still an uncomfortable tone that you need to get familiar with. She pulls on some white sweats while repeatedly hitting herself in the leg. This is our title character music, everyone. She is a nonverbal autistic who is taken care of by her grandmother. We learn that she sees life through a kaleidoscope of music and colors. She's also notable for always wearing headphones, which just instantly reminded me of Warren, the autistic brother from Something About Mary. Remarkably, he might actually be a less offensive portrayal of autism than what we see here. This scene is short. It's only about 12 seconds, and it really does not prepare you for what's in store. Luckily for now, we can avoid those harsh realities as we transition to our first musical segment. These are by far my favorite part of the movie. Noah has more mixed feelings about them. Some of the songs he likes, some he truly hates. It's understandably a mixed bag, but I do appreciate the fact that we have a wholly original soundtrack at least. Presently we get treated to a musical number called Oh Body. It's a segment that is bathed in yellow, and god if after a dozen watches, if it hasn't grown on me, it's actually becoming quite catchy. Music comes out with this Carrie Fisher earmuff hairdo hot from Star Wars A New Hope, while also wearing what looks to be the yellow power stoop bestowed on Trini Kwan by the great galactic wizard Zordon. This music number loses points for starting off with a weird series of facial twitters and stutters reminiscent of the Three Stooges. We get that weird sort of facial expression that you would expect to see from Curly right after he's been hit in the face with a frying pan. But it does actually get better as it goes along. The dancing itself is, of course, just top-notch, and the set designs and costumings are really great, too. For how much I like to make fun, of course. On a symbolic level, we're pretty sure that the piece represents music trying to get her body to work for her. Because not only does the song sing the lyrics, "Oh Body Don't Fail Me Now," we can see electrical bolt plushies all over music's costumes, which, if you look closely, you can also see an orange felt heart and 2 orange felt circles, which I believe represent her lungs, all attached together on her costume. This number starts off with her whipping herself about to and fro, lights flashing on and off before she makes a quick phone call. Because yes, there is a yellow-drenched phone booth on this set as well, which, after watching this several times, I'm pretty sure this is meant to represent her mind trying to contact the other parts of her body and the difficulty and delay that music suffers in doing so. Just a small side note here. There's a few things that I'm going to need to mention to be able to do this movie. I guess I'll start right off with, I'm not a doctor. I can't imagine why anyone would think I was a doctor, but I'm not. I have done some research into autism for this episode, however, and I think I should state that autism is a complex disorder only further complicated by the fact that many of those more severely afflicted with the disorder are characteristically unable to express themselves, due to varying degrees of challenge with communication and social interaction at large. This all makes understanding the disorder as well as various associated behaviors that come with it, like the increased levels of self-harm, rather difficult, as the motivations for anyone on the spectrum who suffer from verbal, social, or communicative difficulties are contextually inferred. We should separate self-harm from repetitive hitting behaviors, like banging one's head or hitting one's leg like we observe from music. Self-harm, depression, and suicide is sadly much more common in the autistic community than in the general population. But repetitive behaviors like we see here are generally not considered to fall into that same category of injurious action. Usually repetitive behavior is seen as either A, the child is in pain. It's always good to check for injury after repetitive self-hitting. This could also be the child trying to get attention from an adult for communication purposes in general, or a way of the child expressing that they are experiencing sensory overload. I'm going to assume that's probably what we're seeing here, as we know that music listens to music to help her drown out the world, but I'm also pretty sure it's supposed to suggest that her conscious mind is not fully in control of her own body, and this is her way of waking it up somehow. She dances through this yellow set piece and pulls two of those electrical plushies that I had mentioned off of herself, and she attaches them to other characters in costume. And these dancers only have an orange set of felt lips on their costume to distinguish them. I'm supposing this is supposed to be her way of beginning the activation of this part of her body inside of her mind. And the actual music number itself is obnoxiously catchy and could possibly get you infected with an earworm. And other than earworms and the whole offensive body language thing, it's a pretty good little musical number. It features great dancing, good music, and a very interesting set. We then switch right back to the real world, with music lying back down in her bed, which doesn't fully make sense. She's also wearing a white sweater now, but not the sweatpants that she was wearing earlier, and she hasn't put on her headphones yet. Regardless, she grabs her headphones, puts them on, taking her late 80s cassette player with her. We watch her start her morning routine, brushing her teeth before putting on a shirt she was already wearing in the prior scene. She makes her way to the kitchen where Grandma is making smiley eggs with ketchup. And the trick to enjoying this scene is really just enjoying Mary Place's performance of Millie. She seems so genuinely invested in her granddaughter. She tells her these cute little popsicle stick factoids like hippos have red sweat and cats only meow to people before sending her out on a daily walk. We briefly meet Edo Odom, a main character to the movie, before music stops at a magazine shack. The man seems nice before he hands music a stack of dog pictures that are just brutally ripped out of magazines, all rough and crazy ransom note style. Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much. We also get to see Felix for the first time. He's not going to say or do anything really other than throw a thumbs up to Music's grandma in the window and walk down the street a little, but he is one of our main characters and someone you'll need to know for later, so watch out for him. A vendor gifts Music a watermelon-sliced popsicle stick before she heads to the library to look through a book about dogs, and if you hadn't gotten it already, Music really likes dogs. There are dogs all throughout this movie, so I'm not going to tell you about all of them, because there are pictures of dogs, there are sketches of dogs. Music likes dogs, okay? Moving on. Back in the apartment, Grandma's setting to memory the little facts on Music's popsicle sticks before throwing them away when suddenly and unexpectedly, she has a stroke. And we watch her lip droop, and she falls, crashing her head into a vase, dying there on the scene. This is all while her autistic granddaughter is merrily walking along, completely unaware of what's waiting for her when she gets home. Welcome to Music, everyone. It's gonna be a bumpy ride. We get back to Music, coming home to her apartment, and she's led inside the building by George the handyman. Music comes home to continue on her routine, sitting down at the table and looking at the pictures of dogs she's collected before she notices her dead grandma, and she just starts freaking out. Thankfully, George is right there moments later at the door to help out, because just to be honest, I couldn't have dealt with Music being stuck there for any length of time.
really just coming home to her grandma dead on the floor and not being able to do anything about it because of her condition was freaky enough, and the implication of what would happen if no one was there to help is definitely there. And I mean just hell. I've watched this scene so many times now, and it's upsetting, and there's no other way to put it. We're 10 minutes in,